everyone. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2020 Adult Industry Health Summit. I'm here now with Nicoletta, one of our therapists, and she's about to give you a presentation on responsive trauma and coping skills. But I would just like to steal a quick second just to remind you that obviously everything that Pineapple Support does is fully or through your donations. So if you can, and if you want to help us continue to provide such services, then please head over to our website, www.pineapplesupport.org, and give as much as you can. Every dollar does count. So even if it's just $1, it would be brilliant for us. But I'm going to leave you in the lovely and capable hands of Nicoletta. Thank you ever so much, and I will see you again shortly. Thanks, Nicoletta. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to, Leah, I need you to make me a host so I can share my screen. But while I am waiting for that, I will introduce myself. So my name is Nicoletta Heidegger. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist based out of Los Angeles, and I specialize in sex therapy. When I'm not seeing clients, I also host a podcast called Sluts and Scholars. And today I'm going to be talking to you about coping and resiliency skills to combat the impacts of trauma. So let me share my screen with you. Okay, hopefully you all can see that. Leah, I will count on you to tell me if you can't. So this is a picture of Leah and I and Dr. Amy Harwick in the middle. So I just wanted to take a second to dedicate this presentation to my friend and colleague who passed, Dr. Amy. So I just want to offer like a moment for everyone, but also for myself. This was taken at the last time I saw Amy when we presented together with Pineapple Support at XBiz. And she stepped in because somebody couldn't make it. So I'm hoping that she can kind of step in with me today and help me lead this talk with you all. So I just want to take a moment of silence, I guess, for myself and for everyone else, just to pause. Okay. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the stuff so far. So again, today I'm going to be talking about responses to trauma and coping skills. So first and foremost, what is trauma? So if you didn't get to see Angie Gunn's talk right before mine, hopefully you got to tune in because she's wonderful. But here's how I define trauma. I like this definition. It's from an author, psychologist, and researcher named Bessel van der Kolk. And he kind of defines trauma as anything that overwhelms our central nervous system. It's something that changes the way we remember events and the ways that we react to people and situations. A trauma is something that we are basically having trouble integrating into our life, something that has yet to be processed. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, but of course, if you have questions, go ahead and put it on over in the chat and I will be happy to answer. So in that same vein, we talked about what is trauma, but also like what is coping or what is healing and what is resiliency. So because trauma affects our nervous system, which we will talk more about later, to me, coping and healing is a process of relearning and restarting or updating our nervous system. So it's not like we can forget or erase the things that have happened to us, but we can change the way our mind, our body, and our spirit respond to these things. In other words, we can become less activated by upsetting things. We can reconnect with people and we can improve our relationships with ourselves and with others. We do have the potential to wire and rewire our brains and our nervous systems with practice. It's kind of like an old iPhone with a new operating update. So usually those old programs or new programs won't work once you do the update. The same is true for the ways that we have learned to survive in our past. So you may have had to do certain things in your life to survive or get through shitty or tough times. And maybe now when you do those things, it actually doesn't serve you anymore or keep you safe. It may actually be harmful or just not be sustainable anymore. So to me, coping and healing is like updating those old phone programs. I would also invite you to ask yourself, how would you define coping and healing? And what would that look like to you? These would be good things to talk to your therapist about when you're kind of setting goals or expectations with them and with yourself. So there are a lot of different trauma treatment approaches. Let me just move myself so you can actually read the important stuff. There's a lot of different trauma treatment approaches, and we'll talk about them in a bit. But one key thing that to me is crucial for recovery is reclaiming one's body. Because trauma is something that can make us feel out of control or make our bodies and the sensations in our bodies or even our emotions feel unsafe or undeserving of love and care. Trauma work really consists of practicing and creating space, comfort, and awareness for one's body. I really like this quote by that author I was talking about before, and I'll list his book later so you can check it out. Observing yourself, knowing yourself, being curious about yourself, befriending yourself, and taking care of yourself. One of the most striking things that comes out of all the research of trauma is not so much these typical trauma things that people talk about, like nightmares or flashbacks, but one of the most striking things is actually the idea of having a hateful relationship to your body. In contrast, the only way to resolve trauma is to get to know yourself and cherish yourself. That's really fucking hard to do. Or he didn't say fucking, but I'm saying that. It's really fucking hard to do when your body feels unsafe. So most folks who have had some kind of trauma try to get away from their bodies as fast as they can because their bodies kind of stir up that trauma response. The body is where the panic is, the fear and the rage. But you need to get to know your rage and your fear and to learn to take care of it. So we're going to talk about some of those skills to do that, or at least start your path to do that today. Okay, so to do that, the first thing I want to do is teach you something called tracking. You may have heard about this in Angie's lecture if you were here before, but tracking is basically what is happening in our body and our mind and our soul in the present moment. Tracking can help us regulate our emotions, but also just name them and actually know what's going on, which can help us to think more clearly as well as impact how we behave. So it can help us act from a more grounded place. And it's a good opportunity to get to know yourself better and to give yourself permission that you deserve to have feelings, to feel and to get support in your feelings, and that there will be somebody to support you and hopefully other people. So I want to invite you all to do this on your own as I'm doing it, and feel free to share your pies, that's the check-in that we're doing, in the chat if you would like to, and I'll share mine with you. So like I said, an example of tracking is an acronym called PIES. Sadly, not as exciting as eating a pie, but hopefully it will be a practice that you can engage in for yourself. So the P stands for physically. So that's what's going on in my body. What are my body sensations? For example, do I have a tight chest? Am I feeling neutral? Is my face warm? I would say me physically right now, I'm feeling, my feet are feeling a little bit cold. My extremities are a little bit cold. And I'm feeling a little bit of butterflies in my stomach because I'm talking to you all and hope that you take something from this. Intellectually stands for the I. And that's what's the quality of your thoughts and your mind. So how are your thoughts? Are you distracted? Are you present? Right now, I would say I'm present, hopefully. Emotionally, how am I feeling in my heart space? Sad, angry, hurt, embarrassed. Right now, I am feeling a little bit anxious, but starting to feel myself calm down a little bit. And also maybe a little sad as I'm thinking about my friend Amy, but also a little bit excited that I get to share this with you all. And then the S stands for spiritually. I have kind of reinterpreted this as what's the thing that makes you feel grounded? What's something that you like that makes you feel a little more connected to yourself? So that could be nature, a sport that you play, working out, drinking tea. Maybe it is something spiritual, like maybe you are connected to God or a higher power. So I would invite you to do this PIES check-in with yourself as we go through today, to notice any subtle changes in your body physically, any subtle changes in your mind, any changes emotionally, and any ways that you can take care of yourself to feel grounded. That might mean that you need to ask a question or to step away or to take a break or whatever that might look like. I'm just going to take a quick pause to make sure that there aren't any questions in the chat. I'm not sure if the audio was for us. Can folks hear me now? Hopefully give me a thumbs up if yes. Excellent. Let me know if you need me to repeat anything. And if you'd like me to send you this PowerPoint, I'll give you my email at the end. Okay, excellent. I will keep going. Thank you. Thank you all for letting me know. It's hard to get feedback when I can't hear you all, obviously. Okay, great. So what the fuck happens to us when we feel unsafe, stressed, or triggered? If you were tuning into Angie's talk, she may have talked about this a little bit, but hopefully this is just a reiteration, because to me, this is sort of a skill to learn. So repeating isn't so bad. Okay, so before I talk about what happens to our body, I want to talk about what our baseline looks like, or what folks' baseline looks like. So baseline is basically your neutral state. So this is a state where you feel that your body can rest and digest. During that time, you are able to connect with people, so you can socially engage with people. You're able to feel safe enough to relax, to feel empathy, and to read facial cues. So that means when you are feeling triggered or activated, the way you read facial cues is going to be different than the way you read them when you're feeling grounded. So I could have like the same neutral face, and if you were kind of neutral at your baseline, you might see my facial expression and be like, oh, everything's chill. But if you saw that same facial expression when you were being triggered or activated, you would be more likely to interpret that neutral face, that same face, as more angry or frustrated. So again, when you're at that baseline, you have access to connect with others, you feel safe and secure. And what's really important is you have to be in this space in order to allow growth and healing. In terms of what happens in the body, I've got that here on the right. So your heart's kind of beating in a slow rhythmic pattern. Your breath is full and slow. The pupils of your eyes are dilate, like they're shrinking a bit. And like I said, it's part of digestion. So your gut is active, meaning you can digest when you're in this baseline space. Your blood flow is happening naturally, and you've got some good hormones coming in that make you feel joy, or the possibility of joy. So I would ask you, what helps you feel this way? I know it's been tough this year, so maybe the thought of being at baseline is far off. So hopefully you can think of a time maybe in the past when you felt that way, and with who, and what allowed you to feel that way. And I would just invite you to try to think of that time for a second if you can, even if it was just a small time. So that baseline is also called the resiliency zone. And so what that means is, this is kind of a chart that hopefully isn't too confusing, but it's taken from the Trauma Resource Institute, where I did some training. And these blue lines here represent the resilience zone, or what's in between here is the resilience zone. So in here, basically, like, stuff can happen in your life, shit can come up, but you're able to kind of ride the wave and deal with it and still kind of stay a bit more neutral or grounded. You're able to face what's coming your way. What happens when we get activated is we can go high out of the resiliency zone, or we can go low out of the resiliency zone. So some of us can go both. Maybe we go high first, and then we get tired, and then we go low. So the goal in trauma work is to expand this resilience zone, make it bigger, but also know what happens right before we leave that zone. So what changes in our bodies, in our pies check-in that we did before, what changes in our bodies when we go out of this zone. So the high zone, that feels more like being kind of edgy, jittery, feeling manic, feeling anxious, angry, physical pain. And the low zone looks more numb or depressed, sad, isolated. So like I said, the goal in trying to find coping tools that work for you is what brings me back to this resilience zone. Any questions so far? I will look back at my chat box. Someone said pies is great. Great, thank you. All right, cool. All right, so I know this is a lot of words, a lot of shit. Feel free to screen grab it if you're allowed, but like I said, I'm happy to send this to you all if you shoot me an email afterwards. Okay, so this green at the bottom here is what we were talking about. This is like the grounded, neutral, or resilient zone space. And again, what's happening there is you're able to digest, you can connect with people. There's good hormones like oxytocin happening through your body. Circulation is good. You're able to be mindful, to grow, to feel connected, to feel safe. All the stuff that like I personally would like to be feeling. So then what happens here, kind of the squiggly line, is some shit happens that either is traumatizing or that feels like a threat or is perceived as a threat. And why I say perceived as a threat is sometimes things that have happened in our past can make something feel threatening even when it's not threatening anymore. So if you think of somebody who went to war in Iraq and maybe they've been trained to be really hyper vigilant of all the things around them. And so if they hear a loud noise, they get on the ground because they're like, okay, that's a signal of like a bomb or something going off. And now maybe they're back from war and just living their life and they're walking down the street and a car backfires. Their body thinks or perceives that as a threat and they drop down on the ground. Now, they didn't need to do that in that moment, but at a time in their life, that was something that was necessary for their survival. So like I said, something happens that triggers you, that activates you, that you feel is a threat or a perceived threat. And in some ways, this is a positive thing. We sort of evolved to have this response in order to protect us. But like I said, sometimes our nervous system learns incorrectly, or it learned something and thinks that it still needs to be doing that when it doesn't need to be doing it anymore. But if you never had any of this response, you might put yourself in harm's way without knowing. So this is an unconscious thing that happens in your body. So one option is fight mode. So that's moving towards the threat to fight it. So that can look like rage, anger, frustration, or flight, moving away from the thing that feels like a threat. So that's panic, fear, anxiety, worry, concern, physically running away from something or leaving the situation. So in your body, and again, this comes back to that PIES check-in of like what's happening physically. Here are some things that you will notice when you start getting in this state. And it's important to track that for yourself so you know when you're in this state. So your blood pressure increases, your heart rate increases, you struggle a little more in terms of your oxygen potential intake. So breathing in fight or flight looks a little more like exercise breathing or sex breathing, where you're kind of panting like that. So your breathing changes, your pupils dilate. It decreases fuel storage. So what that means is when you're in this space for a long period of time, you get fucking tired. So if you've been in this state all year because 2020 has been a shit show dumpster fire, you might be really tired and be trying to figure out why you're so tired. So it decreases your fuel storage and it doesn't allow you to digest. So you cannot digest when you're in this spot. Another thing you can't do when you're in this spot is you cannot connect with people. And so if you're trying to connect with your partner or a friend or whatever, and you're in this mode, it's not going to happen until you can bring yourself back down to this green space. Another thing that happens if you're in this space for an extended period of time is it adds things like adrenaline and all sorts of hormones into your body that may be good for movement, but when you have it for a long time, it can really mess with your immune system. So you can feel sick more often. Another thing that can happen is your body can be sore. So if you're in this space, you're kind of like a spring waiting to fight or flight. And so if you stay in that space, your muscles are continuously tensed. And because of that, you're more likely to have shoulder pain, back pain, neck pain, because you've been in a constant state of staying stressed. Another thing that can happen as a stress response is freezing. And freezing is like kind of just body collapse. So this is like more of a dissociated state, AKA you're not feeling in your body. You might feel numb or depressed. It's basically if you imagine when you're driving and a squirrel or a rabbit runs out in front of your car and they stop literally in the middle of the road, that's a freeze response. So there might be stuff going on in their body, but they're frozen in fear. And so it's actually an evolutionary skill that has some positives because it's a space where we get to conserve our energy, because it's like, oh, this is a fight I can't win, so I'm not going to put energy into it, not going to waste my energy. But obviously being in this for an extended period of time can cause shutdown, shame, hopelessness, feelings of overwhelm, things that might happen in your body. Your heart rate decreases way low. Your muscle tone, like you might get really, I don't know, just if you think back to those like weed commercials where you're like in the chair, almost like you can't move. It's maybe hard to have eye contact. It's hard to be aware of other people's voices because you're not in your body. In this state, you're also not able to connect. Your sexual responses are off, and your immune system is also not great. So these are what happens in a stress response. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about in just a minute are what can you do to practice getting out of these spots. Let me just check on questions. Great. All right, let me know if you all have questions so far. Looking good. Okay. All right. So here are some things to do. And again, this is not therapy or replacement for therapy. These are a couple skills that you can practice. And the reason that I call them regulating practices is because they are a practice. So don't get too hard on yourself if I teach you some of this stuff and you can't get it right away. This is something that you often need the help of another person to do, like a therapist, or a group or a support group, or just practicing, multiple times on your own. So this is something that is a practice, and I would invite you to practice here with me today. So the first thing, and this is usually helpful when you go into that freeze mode, and the Trauma Resource Institute calls it like the help now resources. But again, I would invite you to find stuff that works for you, but some ideas for help now. So if you're frozen and you feel like you can't move, is there the smallest movement you could do? So sometimes we can overwhelm ourselves by being like, oh, I just have to like get up and get out of bed. And maybe that feels like too much in the moment. So like, what's the smallest part of your body you can move? And just notice that movement. So right now, maybe I'll think of like my pinky finger. So I might just start there and be like, okay, I'm able to move this part of my body, and really just like focusing and feeling that movement. And if I feel like I can, maybe I'll extend it to my other finger. How doable is that? How am I feeling in my body? So just starting with the smallest movement. Maybe it's just your blinking. Maybe it's just your eyelashes. Maybe it's raising your eyebrows. The smallest movement you can think of, and just starting with that. The next one, which I'm going to do right now, is just have a drink of something. Sometimes people will come in my office and they're like so fucking dysregulated. And then they're like, but I haven't drank any water or eaten any food today. And I'm like, well, no wonder. So just taking a moment, drinking some water. And when you drink, I'll invite you to join me with it now, but really just feel whatever you're drinking, whether it's hot, cold, neutral, really just feel that like going down your throat. Really notice like the small sensation changes. Another one is naming colors. So for this one, I want you to look around your room and pick a color, any color. And then I want you to name each thing in the room that has that color. So I'm going to pick red. Red lip, and I'll do it right now, just as an example. Red lipstick, which I wore for Amy's memory. She always loved her red lipstick. Red thing with colored pencils. Red trash can, red pen, red solo cup, red stop share sign on my Zoom, red blanket, red chair, red drapes, So that's an example of something called grounding, just naming all the colors around you. And if you're able to move, or if you want to try it now, a step further that you can take that is naming the colors and also engaging in the sensations around you. So instead of just naming the things, you would get up and go and touch all those things. And I would invite you to do it like an alien seeing those things for the first time. So like, what would you do to interact with something that you had never seen before? For me, I would try all different sensations. So I would touch it, see, you know, what does it feel like? What's the temperature? How does it feel in different parts of my body? What does it smell like? And just any other sensations. What does it weigh? What's the weight of it? Any sensations that you can notice. Does it sound like anything when I, you know, put it between my fingers? So again, these, if you're just joining us, these are things to start doing when you are feeling activated or in that stress or trauma response that we were talking about before. So those are some examples of grounding. Another way to ground, I'm going to stand up and show you. I don't know if you can see my picture in the side here. But basically, grounding is essentially just connecting yourself with something solid. So that could be literally grounding on the floor. So I'm just putting my feet on the floor. I like to do this outside on the grass because I love nature. And all I'm going to do is just rock back and forth, just shifting the weight from one foot to the other foot. That's it, just shifting weight. Another one that I really like for grounding is pushing on something or myself. And so one way to do that is to put your hands like this in kind of like a prayer position and just squeeze. And then release. Squeeze. And release. Another way to do that is to find a wall or a door or something that's sturdy and just push your weight into it and feel the pressure of whatever that hard thing is pushing back against you. Any questions on any of those so far? Okay, somebody said, how long can that freeze state last? Let me stop sharing my screen for a second so you can see me. Okay, somebody asked, how long can that freeze state last? And basically, oh, it can last for a long time. I think some of us can feel safe in that freeze state. And so if you are in that state, I think it can feel really hard to maybe motivate yourself. And so that's sort of where a therapist comes in, so they can help you regulate yourself. Because if you can't, if it doesn't feel safe to like move in your life, that will be really tough to do on your own. And so you may be living in a constant state of that freeze state because maybe it feels safe. And a lot of us, I think, have been in that space this year because of 2020. And because of that, a lot of people are maybe thinking that they are unmotivated or lazy, but really they might just be in freeze state. So again, you don't have to get out of it alone, but maybe start with those small movements and see, maybe there's a friend or a resource that can help you get connected with someone who can help you with that, like a therapist. Okay, let me share my screen again. Hopefully I'm doing all the tech stuff properly. It's always a wondering. Okay, here are some other tools. And I would encourage you to write these down. And before we do one of those pies check-ins, how are you doing? Check in with yourself. Okay, so another thing to do, especially if you are somewhere with a partner, take a break. I think, a lot of people think they have to keep going. And then, like I said, you cannot connect or grow or learn when you are in that freeze state or that fight or flight response. And I know it can be hard sometimes to let a partner maybe walk out or take a break because maybe you've got some abandonment struggles. I know I certainly have that come up sometimes when I'm feeling vulnerable, but take a break and do what you need to do in order to bring yourself back to a grounded state. Breathe. Yes, I know we're all breathing right now in order to stay alive, but not all breaths are the same. So one breath that I like to teach my clients is called box breathing. And I like to do it just through my nose, in and out through my nose. And the reason I use my nose is because mouth breaths are more like excitable breaths. So again, thinking back to earlier in my talk, when we're breathing through our mouth, it's more like when we're exercising or when we're fucking. It's kind of that like panting, like kind of feeling. So nose breaths are more calming, like yoga style breaths. So let's try it all together. So a box breath is breathing in for half the amount of time that you're breathing out. So if we breathe in for 3, we would hold for 3 and then breathe out for 6 seconds. So let's try that all together. I'll do it with you. So breathing in for 3 through our nose, hold for 3 and out for 6. In for 3, hold for 3, out for 6. In for 3, hold for 3, out for 6. Let's try 4. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. If you want to take that one up a step further, something else that can really ground us, like we were talking about before, are sensations. And so a sensation that's really powerful in grounding is scent. So I would invite you to find a scent that elicits a non-shitty memory for you. So that could either be like a vacation you took or a trip to the beach or some great sex you had or whatever, and find some kind of essential oil or candle or perfume or whatever it is that smells like that. You may even like, I don't know, maybe you really enjoy the smell of, I don't know, leather. So maybe you can get a little like leather, little leather thing that you can hold on to, or latex or whatever. So for me, I've got like a little lavender thing. So I'll just put it on my hands. And when I'm doing the breathing, I'll just use that scent. And really taking my time with it to go back to whatever memory comes up when I smell this. So when I think of it, I actually think of my office, which is interesting because in my office, I would always spray lavender, like a lavender spray in between clients, but I haven't been back to my office, and I loved the space that I created, and I haven't been able to go there because of COVID stuff and working from home. And so it sort of makes me feel like I'm in a safe place that I've created, and it brings my heart rate down a little bit and just makes me feel cozy. So I would encourage you to find some scents that you like that you can do that with. Another one that I really like is tense and relax. So if you happen to tune into my last talk with Pineapple, which was about self-parenting and self-care, we might have done this one, but I love doing it all the time. So if you haven't done it, feel free to join in if you feel safe and comfortable to. And if you have, let's do it again. So this is something called a progressive muscle relaxation. And so all I'm going to ask you to do is to tense and relax different parts of your body, and I'll guide you through which parts to do when. And as you tense, I will invite you to breathe in and hold. And as you relax, you will breathe out and relax that muscle. Any questions about how to do that before I guide you through it? Okay, No questions so far on that one. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me and we can be present and do this together. Okay, so again, this is called a progressive muscle relaxation, and all I'm going to invite you to do is we're going to be tensing and relaxing different parts of our body. If you have any physical pain or physical ability stuff, please do what you can do. So this shouldn't cause you any pain, and if for some reason something does, do a different part of your body, or if for some reason you have parts of your body that you can't move, do the parts of your body that you can, even if it's just your eyeballs. So I want to invite you to either close your eyes or focus on one point if closing your eyes doesn't feel super safe. I'm going to do it with you, and I can't see you, so don't worry if you think you look silly. And you can see me look silly, so when you're doing it, you feel good. So first we're going to start with our feet. So I'm going to invite you to take a breath in as you squeeze your feet as hard as you can, crunching your toes, holding that breath. And then with an exhale out, relax those toes and those feet. Taking a deep breath in, holding and squeezing those feet. Hold and squeeze. And breathe out, letting those feet relax. Now we're going to make our way up to our calves, the lower part of our legs. You want to put your feet out in front of you if you're able to, squeezing and flexing those calves, holding your breath. And with an exhale out, shake them out and relax. One more time, squeezing and flexing those legs. And with an exhale out, shake them out. One more time with those legs, squeezing and holding with a breath in and out. Now we'll go to the upper part of our legs, our quads, squeezing and tensing almost till your muscles are shaking. And breathe out as you feel them melt into the chair or the bed beneath you. One more time with a breath in, squeezing and flexing, and hold. With a breath out. All right, now we're going to go to our pelvis. And hello, if you just joined us, we're right in the middle of doing a tense and relaxing exercise. So feel free to jump in or wait just a minute for the next part. So now we're going to go to our pelvic area. So whatever you want to call that for yourself, your pussy, your penis, whatever, your ass, that whole area, your pelvic floor, squeezing and holding as you take a breath in and out, letting it sink into whatever you're sitting on. One more time, breathing in, squeezing and holding like a big kegel, and out. Now we're going to work our way up to our stomach and our chest. So squeezing as if you're tensing for impact with a breath in and out. One more time, squeezing and holding that stomach and chest. And out. Now we're going to do our shoulders and our neck. So squeezing and holding. And with the breath out, really feeling that neck get long and your shoulders fall away from your ears. One more time in your neck and shoulders. And out. Now my favorite one, our face. So make the stankiest stank face as you flex all the muscles in your face and hold. And release, feeling your face melt, your jaw go slack. One more time with your face. And out. Now I'd invite you to just do a couple more, either full body or focusing on the part of your body that you particularly liked, as I pull back up my PowerPoint, and just do a quick pause check-in like we did earlier. How are you feeling? What's coming up? Okay, welcome back. Okay, so that was the tense and relax, and you don't have to do it for the amount of time we did it. We just did it that way because I was guiding you. Even if it's just like a tense and relax of your hands, or maybe a couple full body ones, just takes about 30 seconds. That's one that you can do on your own. Another thing that's good is something with your body. So especially when we get into something like that freeze state, or we feel dissociated, if we can have some movement and feel grounded, that can really bring us back to the present moment. So this can be everything from dance to stretching. So maybe picking a song that you know you really like and just trying to move to it, or just getting up and stretching. Remember when we talked about that fight or flight engages your muscles? So this would be, the opposite of that. Sometimes we need a little more of like a shock to the system to really feel the sensation. So a safe hot or cold shower. So obviously don't like burn yourself to where you're harming yourself. Hot or cold shower. And for those of you in the kink community, I wouldn't say, go engage right away in kink if you're feeling like totally dissociated in a negative way or in fight or flight, but that type of sensation play can also be things that maybe you do. So I think I had a client who talked about using like rope on herself as a coping tool, and feeling the sensation of the rope on her skin. So, you can really be creative with this and find ways that work for you, and just do those pies check-ins to see if you can notice, what does this do to my body? What does this do to my brain? How does this resonate with me? Another thing you can do, and this is helpful if you're kind of having a flashback, and if you don't know what that is, a flashback is basically something that brings you back to that time of trauma. So for example, I had someone who was a survivor of some kind of assault, and when she heard a certain type of music, that would kind of bring her right back to that assault time where you feel like you're really in that moment. And so one way to help process and deal with that is to come up with a couple questions for yourself. You can even write it in your phone so that you don't have to remember them on the spot, but questions that help orient you to where you are now. So what day is it? What time is it? I would say who's president, but for some of you, that's not very fucking grounding at all. So you can say like, I don't know, who's my favorite singer? What am I doing today? What did I eat for breakfast? Where am I? Basically things that are happening right in the moment that can bring you to the present. Another thing you can do, if this is possible, which I know might be hard for some during COVID, is connect with a safe person. So I don't have my person with me right now, but I'm going to use my stuffed animal Thompson that my partner got me. So for some people, when they're in a trauma state, they don't want to be touched at all. But touch can be grounding if that's something you're open to. So one of the things I like is called hug until relaxed. So I'm going to hug my sloth friend Thompson. And all you're going to do is just, I would usually be standing with this, but just hug that person that feels safe. And you can even do that rocking back and forth with them. And then all you're going to do is just kind of just notice anything in your body and just see if you can stay there until you feel any subtle changes, until you feel any subtle grounding, or maybe you feel your muscles relax a little bit. And really just taking your time with it. I won't spend all the time here, but sometimes that can last for like 10 minutes. And if you don't have that, or people don't feel safe for you, use a pet, use an animal, get a weighted blanket, something where you can have that type of connection. And then another one is called resourcing, which is something I think Angie did a little bit earlier. And this is basically thinking of a person, place, thing, event, something in your life that doesn't suck, and then just kind of getting lost in the sensations of that time and really going back to that time and noticing any subtle changes happening in your body. Okay, I'm going to go through this sort of quickly just so I can open it up for a couple minutes of questions. But hopefully those tools can be a start for you. But look, this is not something you have to practice or do on your own, like I said. And so there's a couple types of therapy that I think are great when working with trauma, especially because they focus on the body connection. So here's a couple types of therapists that do, or these are a couple styles of therapy that you might want to reach out to or do some research on if you're thinking of what kind of therapist you should get. One is someone who focuses on trauma CBT, and that's not cock and ball torture, sadly. It is cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's more short-term therapy, and it helps teach skills to folks to help with overwhelming thoughts and feelings. Another one is called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I know that's a mouthful, so just look it up so you can get to know it a little bit more. But basically, it sort of uses the body and the nervous system and enables folks to heal from symptoms and emotional distress that are the result of traumas or any disturbing life experiences. This next one, also a mouthful, is called Narm, Neuro Affective Relational Model. And Narm focuses on trauma, but mostly around relationship and attachment trauma. So this is the kind of trauma that Angie was talking about earlier that maybe is based on the kinds of relationships you've had ongoing in your life. The next one is called Somatic Experiencing. That is a method, it's another body-oriented approach that helps with the healing of trauma and other stress disorders. And it's the work of a great researcher named Dr. Peter Levine. Another one is called the Trauma Resilience Model. Another option is group therapy and support groups. Angie, who was talking before me, has a great one. I think you can find it through a website called Healing Intersections, and they specifically have ones for sex workers that are sex positive and for racial and gender identity intersections and minority sexualities. Pineapple Support also has some groups that they're offering. Another one, this should be over to the left, is something called neurofeedback. Another type of trauma therapy is trauma-informed yoga. And then one of my favorites, which is one that I also work with on clients, is equine therapy. So that is using horses in therapy. And just to finish up, here are some other resources. So again, there's that group, Healing Intersections. There's a great podcast and website with a colleague of mine named Jiminica called Trauma Queen. And these are 3 books that I think are really great to understand trauma a little better and coping tools. Thank you so much. This is my website where you can find my email and my Instagram if you want to slide into my DMs with questions relating to this, not unsolicited dick pics. Thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any more questions. Oh, great. Yeah. And someone from our Pineapple team said that there's a weekly drop-in therapy group. So that's a great option too, if you're looking for a group. Thank you all so much for listening and joining in. I hope you got something from this. And again, you don't have to go through this alone, and you deserve to get help and support. And hopefully one of those resources or types of therapy speaks to you. Otherwise, feel free to email me and I'd be happy to send you some resources. And I'll wait for just a couple minutes. If there's any questions, feel free to send them in the chat. You are so welcome. Thank you for saying thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, there are lots of other great talks today and tomorrow. So hopefully you got something from this, but everyone has a different style and a different topic. So definitely check out what else is going on today and tomorrow.